This segment is called My Story, and it's 15 minutes. So those of you who might know me know that I talk a lot. And so I'm going to be as quick as I can. And I'm actually going to talk about my 20-year learning journey in about 15 minutes. So buckle up, I guess. And to start it, actually, we'll talk about a racing game. So just a little bit about how I got into the gaming industry. It's kind of that story about network and building relationships and right place at right time, but also transferable skills. And that was something that the women were talking about earlier in the segment. But I had an MBA in sports business, and I had worked in professional sports. And so I knew a lot about sports, and I'd played games my whole life. And so that kind of just right time, right, conversation moment happened, and I joined Sierra Entertainment. I'm from America. I'm from Washington State, and Sierra is based there, and it's a company that was almost as old as me when I started. So legacy brands that I didn't get a chance to work on, but I started in the sports portfolio. And I think for me, the learning journey started from day one because I knew nothing about NASCAR. And so for me, I needed to learn about video games, and I needed to learn about this brand of NASCAR, and I needed to learn about players. And so the learning journey began, and I spent a lot of time just over the shoulder of game makers, actually. How do we make the games? What's possible? What's the technology that we're using? And so I really focused a lot on just understanding the game making side of things, but trust me, I'm still a marketer. And so from Sierra Entertainment, that foundation building, I had an opportunity to move to Los Angeles and work for Activision. And again, another iconic development studio working with id Software. And here I am still foundation building and getting to work on some of the biggest brands in gaming, Doom 3, Quake, Wolfenstein, and just started to broaden my horizon about what does it mean to be a games marketer. And so how do we think about identity, and how do we think about bringing identity, these legacy brands to life in a modern way? And what's that resonant experience when you go from kind of these older brands to something more modern? So again, a lot of great foundation building. I also had to learn about wine because the founders and leadership team at id, they loved their wine. So that was pretty fun too. A little sommelier school on the side. Also at Activision, I then had an opportunity to work on the Call of Duty portfolio. And, I think about that learning journey, like Call of Duty was such a great experience working with the original Infinity Ward team as they shaped, what's the formula for Call of Duty? And then we thought about how do we take that into new conflicts, right? New theaters, so to speak. And so Modern Warfare was the first time that we brought, the Call of Duty format to something other than World War II. And, an opportunity to work with a world-class development team really shaped my thinking, working with them on what does a culture of excellence mean, and how do we think about that in going to market. And that started to lead to some pioneering activities, which is kind of another theme, for my career, but working with lots of agencies on what's some new inventory we can use for marketing or for advertising. What are some new techniques that we can use? I mean, this is 2007, so there isn't like social media. Facebook is still what college kids use to connect with each other. And so just really kind of pioneering on some new techniques, and also really the birth of the brand promise of Call of Duty, which the team still uses today, which is the soldier in all of us, and it really started in collaboration with Infinity Ward. So this began kind of as Call of Duty is like on the rise and this really amazing franchise that's being built. I thought it's time for something else, and I was kind of on the hunt for something that wasn't shooting people in the face digitally, of course, online, or monsters, and it wasn't mature rated, and where I didn't go to smelly conventions. And so I thought, well, what can I do that's different and also is a bit of a life journey? And so I took an opportunity and moved to Vancouver, British Columbia. Canada is a different country. And so that was kind of my big life experience, is moving to Canada, and had an opportunity to work on the Need for Speed brand. And, for me, again, it's about that kind of intentional choice around learning, that learning value that I have. And what I saw from Need for Speed is a franchise in decline. It was a franchise that had this wonderful, kind of zeitgeist moment of Fast and the Furious films and really great products with Underground and Most Wanted. But now it's like on the downslide, right? A couple of bad games, a couple of games that weren't high quality and didn't have really great resonance with the players. And it was in a tough place. I thought, ooh, That sounds perfect for me. So let's get on that. So I jumped up to Vancouver, worked on the Need for Speed brand. So much good work, built a team, worked with teams in different parts of the world. There's a team in the UK we worked with, one in Canada, different part of Canada. And, but also got to learn and pioneer on a free-to-play product. So this is an image of Need for Speed World. This was EA's first free-to-play game. We helped really usher in what free-to-play was for EA. How does it connect in with our systems, our back office, our accounts? How do we think about the analytics? What are we measuring? How do we operationalize a live service? So before then, we were really just blockbuster launches and maybe a DLC or two, along the way. So really transforming the way that the company thought about live services, and certainly was a red thread for me in my career and how I, learned and pioneered and thought about services. Also, the life move worked out, and I ended up meeting my now husband in Vancouver working on this product. So that's a good little bonus as well. And then a friend calls, and this is the friend that you get to work on really cool stuff together when you're colleagues, but at different companies, and you get to pioneer and build kind of new opportunities in the marketplace that didn't exist before, like the beta program for Xbox that we did on Call of Duty. And she calls and says, "Hey, I've got this opportunity down in San Francisco at EA." She'd come back to EA. Why don't you join me? And that led to, another learning journey for me. So to take this idea of digital transformation and not just our products, but also our relationships and how we're in relationship with our customers within the community space. So thinking about how we're responding in these channels, how we're growing these channels. I mean, this is 2011, so it's still early days. How do we think about the funnel and the consumer journey? How are we measuring that? How are we using that to help us understand our business performance and what our kind of expectations are for sales if we're bringing people to the top of a performant website and at the bottom a conversion to the origin store, for example? And so I had the pleasure of learning a ton, building all of the infrastructure for this, and really transforming the way EA did our digital business in our owned channels. A lot of pioneering, a lot of really great work, a lot of learning, and skipping ahead because it has been 18 years, and I want to get to some other good stuff, but taking that experience of digital marketing and thinking about the funnel and consumer journey and measurement and performance, and using that thinking to launch the subscription at EA. So this is the first subscription that we did at EA. It was a joint venture with Microsoft. So it started on Xbox with, of course, our roadmap to scale to PC and to PlayStation. And now the team's actually also scaled to Steam most recently, which is really exciting. But this is an example of how pioneering can take many, many years. To realize that full vision of bringing a subscription service, to life for the EA portfolio, it took about 5 years. It's also, one of those stories that that builds your resilience, that builds kind of maybe the how you manage your stomach when you have experiences of, executives, won't name any names, of course, saying, "Oh, your team might bring the company down with this one," And so just that idea of pioneering, there's a lot of risk involved, there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of people that you need to keep informed and stakeholders. And so just really proud of the work the team did here. We built a whole new team. We hired people from subscriptions. Even though we were in Silicon Valley, it was still a very new part, new time in the business. And of course, as you guys all know, subscriptions is now pretty ubiquitous with the gaming industry. So pretty cool work, team. My last stint at EA was actually here in Stockholm. So I'm based in Stockholm now, and it's dark out, which makes sense. But I had an opportunity to come back to brand management and now to look at it across a portfolio, right? So I'd had a few different, billion-dollar brands to look after, and now we've got a portfolio of brands. So another learning opportunity for me about, scaling our teams and being able to support small projects like EA Originals, which is, super passion project for me, as well as, support our big franchises like Battlefield. Also in this role, so being part of the executive team and leadership team for the CMO, I had the pleasure of really digging into our diversity and an inclusion strategy. And so this was an effort that had just been kicked off by EA, and EA is doing a lot of great investment here, a lot of great work. A lot of companies are doing a lot of great work here. But again, early days, 2016, and thinking about our strategy. So how do we build a more diverse organization in the marketing? And it's 800 people around the world, right? How do we create a more inclusive environment? How do we support the growth of our diverse employees? And so they have long careers, great careers at the company. So that gave me an opportunity to really look at a lot of data. We built a data pipeline and a rhythm of business to be able to look at our data on a quarterly basis. We started to build out programs that we could measure to see what kind of impact we were having on the different outcomes that we were looking to drive. So really good work, lots of good work from the team that they continue to do. But that started to shape my thinking around, okay, we're doing this for our employees. Of course, yes, we should be doing that. But as a person who's been gaming for most of my life, and I do play Battlefield, and I do mask as my husband online, and before that, maybe a boyfriend or two. So how are we creating these more inclusive games? And so that kind of shifted my thinking. And working on Battlefield 5, there's a woman on the cover, like that's obvious, and there's a lot of backlash because of that, and we can take that in the Q&A if you care to. But really, there was a key insight, which is through Nielsen, we know that self-reporting, 30% of our players were female, but there wasn't representation, really. It wasn't good enough. And so the investment here for Battlefield 5 is really around the ability for you to choose your avatar and customize your avatar, and you can choose that to be female. And so great step forward, and still plenty of work to do for representation and, of course, online safety and reducing abuse and toxicity for not just Battlefield, but for everyone, as I know this community is talking a lot about. But it was the beginning of something, and that something led to many other things. And what today EA calls the inclusion framework. And so colleagues on FIFA were doing some great work, The Sims doing some great work, Need for Speed was using the framework and some of the tools to make great choices. And really ultimately it's about how do we create games and experiences that are more meaningfully diverse, that are more inclusive, safe, fair, less toxic, and that are more accessible. And that can be device accessibility, but also thinking about people with visible and invisible disabilities. And so how are we, more inclusive play in general? So I took that as a real, strong passion for me, and did something that is maybe feels like a 180 to, if you look at kind of some highlights of my pioneering and learning career, mostly working on games for males 18 to 34, and a lot of them, with kind of guns involved, so to speak. But it really was driven from the passion of how do we pioneer in a space where we can make great games and entertainment for girls and young women. And being here in Stockholm, Star Stable Entertainment was an obvious opportunity for me, and made a lot of sense for me. So today I'm the Chief Marketing Officer, and we are looking at building, the most inclusive platform that we can. We've got a signature franchise called Star Stable Online, which is horses and adventure and magic and sisterhood, and it's an online game, and it's a really great game, and we're really proud of it. And we're also building other games. And so, not to do too much of a pitch, we can talk more or reach out to me, but this is the first time in my career that 50% of the management team has been female. This is the first time in my career where I've worked in gaming where more than 50% of the staff, the talent who makes the games are female, where we have females at every single level of the organization and in every single function of the organization. So really proud to be on the management team and kind of pioneering us forward. So happy to talk more about what we're doing next. So I've talked about pioneering a lot. And so for those of you who, are in the space or, in gaming, you know that if you're working on, the front lines and there's no playbook and it hasn't been done before, sometimes it's tough work. And sometimes it takes a long time to see the fruits of that labor. And so that's been my experience with pioneering, is sometimes people think you're crazy. They don't quite understand what you're doing. And hopefully you're around long enough to see the benefits of that work. You didn't quit from frustration or get fired, so to speak. But to kind of support the pioneering spirit, so to speak, for me, it's come down to a really important value for me, which is fierce courage. And I use the word fierce because it just reminds me that, sometimes you need to get fierce about it. Like just being courageous isn't enough. And it's hard to be fiercely courage all of the time, especially when you're in, these meetings with lots of risk and lots of fear and lots of stakeholders, and people don't have all the information. And And so what do you need? And I think I could have probably done a whole talk on what do you need to stay fiercely courageous. And the first one is tribe. And again, that's why I'm here. That's why I said yes to this, 30 minutes with this group, but really it's hopefully a longer relationship, with this community, which is community matters, and the people who are there to support you, to provide that safe place for you to vent, to provide that inspiration, to provide, that pick you up when sometimes it's hard to be courageous, is super important. And that's been a thread for me, through my career, and something that, I continue to take seriously to support other women in the network. And of course, allies, male allies as well. And then the last one is self-care. And this could have easily been my 18-year self-care journey, if I'm being honest, because I don't think we talk enough about self-care in this industry and maybe in general. But, for me, it starts with yoga and more yoga and yoga training and more yoga training, and even being able to hold the space in a closet at EA for people who wanted to do some meditation and pranayama. So, that's been something that's helped self-care. Having a coach, I had a coach for a year, and that was hugely beneficial for me, and actually translated me into taking coaching. So I went to Coactive and did professional coaching. And so anyway, my last thing I'll leave you with before we head into Q&A, if anybody wants to talk more about self-care, is just that this, an 18-year career in this industry of pioneering and learning, does take a lot of self-care.